Let's consider some additional operations we can perform with strings. Remember that in Python, we can treat a string as a list, and that allows us to use the special for function that iterates through a list with a string. If we want to process all of the characters in the string individually, one at a time, iterating through each, and applying some algorithm, we can do that using the for syntax. The for syntax uses the reserved word for. You provide a identifier that you want to use for an individual item in the collection. In this case, it'll be for a single character. So I picked the identifier ch, but you can use anything you want. Then you need the reserved word in, and then normally you put your list name over here on the right side before the colon. Because our list is a string, you'll want to put whatever string identifier you have in your program. After the colon, list all the steps that you want to apply to each character within the list. So for example, suppose that you wanted to create a program that printed each letter in somebody's name with an asterisk symbol after each character. We could do that by saying for each character, ch, in last name, colon, make sure yours has a colon in there, print out ch and then also an asterisk character. If we did this and the last name variable stored the contents Smith, S-M-I-T-H, what would print out to the screen? Executing this iteration process. Well, the computer would pull out the very first character in the last name, the S, and it would print the capital S followed by the asterisk symbol. Then it would pull out the next character in the last name, Smith. That's the M, and print the M followed by an asterisk character. It would continue the iteration process, pull out the I and print that followed by the asterisk character, then T followed by the asterisk, then H followed by the asterisk, and because that's the last character in last name, Python would know to stop the iteration after it processed the H character. So all in total, it would print S asterisk, then on a new line, M asterisk, then on a new line, I asterisk, then on a new line, T asterisk, and finally H asterisk. Another cool thing that we can do with a string value is turn it into numeric information. Sometimes this comes in handy if we're processing data and it contains numbers and we want to sometimes, in part of our algorithm, treat that particular string as though it were character-based data. And in another part of the algorithm, we might want to treat it as numeric data. For example, if we were processing information that's a credit card number or a ISBN number or a UPC code, all of those kind of values could be treated as a string in our program, maybe for some algorithms, but for other algorithms, we might want to treat them as though they were a numeric value. Now, we won't be able to apply the addition and multiplication operator directly to a string value, and that's because those are those special arithmetic operators that are defined for strings. So if we use a plus symbol with string operands, it will perform concatenation instead of addition. And if we apply the multiplication operator to strings, it will do the multiplier operation rather than traditional multiplication. If we want to change the value that's stored in the string so that we treat it as a numeric value, we need to use the int function, sort of like what we do when we read in input values that aren't strings. Remember, when we use the input operation in Python, it automatically assumes that the information that the user is entering at standard input is a string data value. And if we want it to treat it as though it were an integer or a floating point value, we have to put that extra int or float in front of the input. We can do the same thing in other places in our program as well. So suppose that we read in a ID number. So we have our input command, please enter an ID number, and we're going to store it in this variable ID number. Then suppose that we pull out just the very first character from that ID number, and we store it in a variable called first character. And suppose we want to perform some kind of arithmetic check related to that first character. we can't perform the arithmetic on the character itself. Instead, we have to convert the character into an integer value, and we can do that with the int function, again, just like we do with input. So we could say int first character, and that will allow Python to change that character into a numeric value. Then we're storing it in the variable called first digit. And then we can apply arithmetic operators to that particular numeric value. Let's see how this works in an example. So suppose the user enters in 12345 as their ID number. In memory, that string is being stored in my variable with the identifier ID number. Then if in my program, I say I want to pull out just the character at position 0 within that number, position 0 is the first one, so it's going to pull out the 1 character and store that in my variable first character. And then if I typecast my first character as an integer and I store that as first digit, it's not going to store the character 1 in that variable. It's going to store the numeric value 1. And that's because we did that typecast. So then if we say print first character times 2, it's going to print the string 1, and it's going to use the string multiplier operation. So it's going to print 1, 1. But if I apply the same operation, the multiply by 2 operator on first digit, it's going to process the numeric value. So it'll say 1 times 2, that's 2, give me a numeric result. So this program example, it prints out 1, 1. That's when it's printing the 1 character and using the multiplier operator for strings. And then in the second print command, it's going to apply the numeric multiplication operator because we're operating on a numeric piece of data.